Welcome back to the Nose Plays Endless Space 2. So, I decided after how well I felt the last video went that I would go ahead and continue the series on combat tips and this new Vaulter gameplay because the game's going so well. I really like the opening that I've had so far and the advice that I've been able to give on how I like to play the game. And the tips and tricks that I have for my opening with the Vaulters have been good. There's been a lot of good examples of how to utilize some of the things that I see within the game mechanics that can improve your Vaulter gameplay. And so I want to continue that. But I also, after watching my video, realized that there's a lot more information that I could have given on the combat system. And I wanted to touch on some of the points that I kind of felt I missed, and so I'm going to be doing that today as well. Before we begin, let's just kind of review where we were wrapping up turn 10 at the end of last game. We had just settled this colony, and we were getting ready to end the turn. There's a couple things that I forgot to do. On turn 9, I actually had the ability to put my hero in a system, and I forgot to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and move Petrovchutka to our system. Now, the cool part about this is she's already gained 2 levels at this point. She's level 3. And we talked about why putting her down in the system at level 1 and trying to build her up through the production of buildings is not ideal. At this point in the game, she would only be level 2, and she would have gotten a couple of turns sooner of resource production, because I very likely would have chosen the same. But now, by putting her down on turn 10, she's going to be collecting twice as much. Eventually she would have gotten to the same level, but she got there a little bit quicker doing it this way. And again, I could have gotten her down 1 turn earlier if I'd been paying a little bit more attention. But we'll get her down this turn before we actually end the turn. It was a real exciting end for me, and I wanted to continue it. The nice thing is we've got 2 systems down. Next turn, we're going to finish X atmospheric filtration, which is going to give us the 2 technologies we need to unlock our tier 3 technologies officially, and it will give us basic system development. That basic system development will be titanium, and with 1 turn of production we will be able to get an additional 40 industry and 40 food on both of our systems by the beginning of turn 12, which is really fantastic, and one of the reasons why I held on to as much of the titanium as I could, because not only are we using titanium for early colonization of the Argosy, we're also using it for system development, and we still have to use it for the development of special buildings like wonders and our portal systems, but we also have to use it for weapons and for ship designs in the future. So these resources, again, as I've pointed out in the previous video, we use just a ridiculous amount of them, and it's almost never a bad idea to increase your income of both titanium and hyperium when you're playing the Vaulters. I would never use this tactic with any of the other factions because they just don't have the demand on these resources that we do. But because we have so many special, unique things that we spend them on, we really need an excessive amount of these 2 particular resources. So, I think everything else is caught up. Both of our systems are well on their way to getting certain things done that we needed done. Our laws are all in place. Populations are growing. We don't really need to sell anything, and we have our science picked out for the moment. So let's go ahead and end the turn, since I did get the hero on. Ooh. Who is this?
Be content.
Have met
Fortune
Horatio.
smiles, for Horatio is willing to speak with you.
Okay, so Horatio's scout ship is over here. That means that the Horatio player is somewhere down this lane, it looks like. I haven't really seen them anywhere else. I guess they could have technically come this way. I thought, yeah, so we saw the blue player over here. And the blue player, I did notice, we know who the blue player is because if you mouse over this, it shows the icon of the blue player being the Empire, United Empire. So even though we haven't officially met them, to my knowledge, you can still, if you see any of their outposts or you see any um, remnant of their civilization somewhere, going to this mouse over and checking the score card will tell you who they are, which is kind of useful. Um, so the blue player's up in this region, and Horatio's very likely down in this region. Okay, we got a couple other things we need to do. So this is getting built. We're gonna have the Argosy back up in 2 turns, and we're gonna immediately send the Argosy over to Pollux unless I see something better within the next couple of turns. I doubt that will be the case. We need to pick a new technology, which we'll do shortly. And we have a new deed. Founder of conglomerates. Be the first to create 2 trade companies. We may end up doing this. I don't know. I rarely play a trade-heavy style, and I don't play a lot of the trade-heavy factions. I probably need to. It's something that I have not spent enough time exploring within the game. I know they can be incredibly powerful and provide you with amazing amounts of income if you do it right. And I know for a fact the guys over at 4X Alchemist, particularly the brother who prefers to play with the Lumeris, has some fantastic advice on how to get trade companies up and running. So if you're interested in learning how to do more with trade, you might check out some of their videos. But I don't know that we're going to get to it in this particular game. Definitely something to consider whenever you unlock those deeds and look at them and see what the rewards are. Okay, we have 4 probes that we can send out. We do not have any really good spots to send them, unfortunately. I do see a bunch of curiosities over here, and one thing that we know we're going to be doing is we are going to be colonizing Pollux soon. Since we do not have currently a second scout ship, what I think I may do is go ahead and send the scout ship that we have over this direction to grab a bunch of these. And one thing that we may do when we get to our main capital system is launch a bunch of probes out this way again and see if we can uncover a little bit more. I'm not sure that our probes are longer range yet, but we may be able to upgrade to better probes. So we'll consider doing that. One thing I am going to go ahead and do is just send out the 6 that we have. Oh, I thought I had 6. I guess I only had 4. My mistake. And then we're gonna head over to here. Get there in a couple turns. Okay. The other really important thing that we needed to do was get our system development. So we're going to go ahead and confirm titanium as our tier 1 system development. And we're going to go ahead and rush that to the top of the queue in both of our systems. That's going to cost a significant amount, 60 of our titanium already gone. We're going to need a fair amount in order to colonize early, and then a little bit more in order to get the system development down immediately for the 3rd system in Pollux. And so you can already see, despite the fact that we started this turn with over 100 titanium, we're already down to 41. And we are producing 9 per turn at this point, which is amazing. and 7 per turn on the Hyperion. So we're going to replenish it rather quickly, but we're always going to be able to find uses for it, whether it's colonizing more quickly, using it for building structures or ship designs, or eventually selling it on the market when we just have a ridiculous abundance of it for a fair price. Strategics tend to net you more than others, so that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and figure out our next plan for our systems. So we know in order to colonize Pollux, we're going to need this tech because we need to get arid planets in order to get on that system. So let's go ahead and queue that up. That's only going to take 2 turns, which is pretty fantastic. If we add this on, that's going to take 11 turns. It might be a little bit quicker than 11 because we will unlock some science in between now and then. Public-private partnerships was almost finished, as was cerebral reality in one of our systems. So once those things get up, the science might be a little bit quicker. We do need both of those techs because we need desert planets in order to finish colonizing our system. And again, our population is getting pretty close to full, so that's what I want to go ahead and focus on because I know I'm going to need to get that done. Okay, now is probably a good time to take a little break from the rest of the game and jump back into discussing some of the combat tips and tactics that I did not cover in the previous video. So we're gonna go ahead and create another ship design, and once again we're going to turn on the detailed menu and we're going to talk about a few things. So one of the things that I did not discuss in the previous video was defensive modules, and I want to spend a little time talking about defensive modules and support modules in this video. The tier 1 defensive modules are pretty poor, and I have an idea as to which one I prefer generally speaking. I don't know for certain if it is the absolute most efficient way to play, but it makes sense in my head, so I'll just talk through my thinking on it, and I'll kind of let you guys debate and experiment and let me know if I'm in the wrong on this. First and foremost, as Forex Alchemist pointed out, the tier 1 explorer ship for the Vaulters is quite exceptional compared to most of the other factions' tier 1 ships. And when we're talking about tier 1 explorer ships, it's probably one of the best ones in the game. The main reason for that is the flexibility, the fact that we have 4 support slots as well as 2 weapon slots and an armor slot means we can do a lot of different things with this ship design. One thing you can do, as I pointed out at the very beginning of our last video, is you can create what I like to call the supernova design, and this just lets you put out a massive amount of probes around a system, and then you just retrofit for whatever you want to do afterwards. So whenever you're on a system that hasn't been fully explored, you know, the region around it, you just stop in, equip this, shoot out your 8 probes, re-equip whatever you want for the rest of the journey that you're on, and get a lot of logistic information in the process. But we're not really concerned about that. We're more concerned about combat. So the fact that we have 2 weapon slots and a defensive slot makes this a pretty good ship in the early game. It does have some downsides, and the problem is it will pretty much outright lose to any other tier, I guess you could say tier 2, but any other actual combat ship. So once somebody starts researching the combat ships, where you actually have your attackers and your protectors, you're going to have problems keeping up with the enemy. If you outnumber them with these ships, you can still do considerable damage, especially if your weapon tech is equal to or higher than them. But the real downside to this ship versus the higher class ships is you have considerably fewer hit points. Most of the other ships, and I'm using the Vaulter's numbers as an example. I don't know that all of them are exactly the same. I think there's probably some variation. But the other attacker class ships for the Vaulters actually have about 2,000 hit points. And I'm assuming that that's pretty standard for the other factions without actually looking it up. So most of the other factions, once they get attacker class ships, are going to have more hit points than your ships. They're also going to have considerably more manpower. We only have 40 manpower. That's less than half of what most ships have. The one nice thing with all of these support slots is we do have the ability to increase manpower through the manpower modules later in the game. So these can make actually quite effective siege ships because of the number of support modules that we can throw down. We can put a bunch of manpower on these ships, and they're relatively cheap to produce. So that's one effective way to use these. You can also put a bunch of the titanium slug modules on them to eliminate the opponent's manpower and just bombard them, or a mixture of both. The flexibility is really powerful, but they are going to be inferior in combat. Now, their weapons are not necessarily going to be inferior. So if we put 2 weapons like this on this ship, it's going to be pretty effective as a damage dealer. The problem is that the attacker class ships in particular get a bonus to their damage. It's not a very big one, but it's enough to give them the edge in combat. So even if you are even in the number of ships and the number of weapon modules you have with your opponent, they're still going to have a slight advantage, not only in damage but also in health, and so you really cannot engage them in combat unless you outnumber them. You don't have to outnumber them by a ton, but I would say you would need at least 4 vessels to their 3 or 4 to their 2, depending on which faction you're facing. If you do that, you can wage a successful war with these ships in the early game, but you definitely need to upgrade to the more effective combat ships in the mid game. And let's go ahead and talk about the defensive modules and how defenses work within this game. So we've talked a little bit about the flexibility of this ship. One thing we don't have a lot of flexibility of on this particular ship is our defensive module. We only have 1 slot for that. It also doubles as a support module. So it's probably always going to be a defensive slot unless you're making a very special ship like the one I showed you earlier, with the 4 probes or maybe 4 manpower modules to drop off a whole bunch of invaders. But we have 2 types of defensive modules we can add to our ship. The first type is basic plating. Hull plating is pretty effective defense against kinetic weapons. Unfortunately, the tier 1 version of this is actually pretty poor, in my opinion, and probably not worth equipping, even when you are facing kinetic weapons. I just don't feel that it's very useful. The higher tier versions of this module definitely have a bigger impact on how much damage they actually prevent from kinetic weapons. But let's go ahead and take a look at the detailed card. So by equipping this, you can see on our battle card, once we switch to detailed stats, that we have 80 additional hit points, which is not a lot. It's a very small amount, not even really 10% increase in health. And down here we have a 9% reduction in the damage that we receive from kinetic weapons. Now this is also a little bit misleading because it's not a flat 9% reduction in the damage to kinetic weapons. It's a little bit confusing. If I mouse over kinetic weapons, specifically slugs, we can see that slugs have a hull plating penetration of 20%. So what that means, let's just equip some slugs for reference. What that means is 20% of the damage that I deal. So let's assume that I'm dealing 5 damage per second. 20% of that damage is going to penetrate my hull no matter what. So that means of the 5 points of damage, 1 point of damage in this case will always penetrate my hull. Okay? Now, the remaining 4 points of damage are then modified by 9%. So they will be reduced by 9%. There's a 9% reduction in that. 9% of 4 is approximately 0.4, half a point of damage, is going to be basically removed. And so instead of doing the full 5 damage, I'm actually dealing about 4.5 damage with this hull plating. Okay, we can multiply that up. If we come over to this, at medium range, every shot or every second of combat, I'm going to be receiving about 25 damage per second from this gun. From this ship, actually, from these 2 guns. With hull plating, what that means is that 5%, or sorry, what did we say? 20%, yeah. 20% of this 25, so 5 damage, is going to penetrate no matter what. So I'm going to receive the 5 damage. But the remaining 20 is going to be reduced by about 9%. So just for numbers' sake, we'll say 10%. And we'll say 10% of 20 is 2. So I'm actually only preventing 2 points of damage with this hull plating. It is not a very effective defense at this tier. Now, the nice thing is if you stack hull plating up, let's say I have a ship with 2 hull plating slots, this number gets significantly better. And it's not a linear scale, and so you really have to kind of pay attention as you're equipping them to see what kind of defense you're actually getting. The fact that this is such a small quantity makes this a really bad choice, in my opinion, because you're just not preventing a lot of damage. There's another reason why I don't like hull plating when I only have 1 slot for my ships defensively. And we'll talk about that right now. So we're going to move on to shields. Now, shields, you can see, have a 24%, a significantly higher percent reduction in the damage that gets through them. But it's not quite as clear, cut and dry as you would think. This is another situation where when you compare these two, shields just look so much better that you would just consider to always take shields. That may or may not be the case. Let's talk a little bit about how shields work. So whenever you receive damage from a weapon, the first thing that is checked is what is the weapon's natural penetration. In this case, even though shields are not ideal for stopping slugs, they will stop slugs to a certain extent. And so in this situation, shield penetration of slugs is only 50%. So that means that half the damage that we receive is going to be dealt to the shields first. So if I have shields up, and let's go back to, let's go to short range, for example. So if we go to short range, every second I'm receiving 42 damage from this ship, from a ship equipped similarly to this one. Okay, 42 damage. The first thing that I know is that half this damage is definitely going through. So 21 points of damage is definitely going through to my hull. The remaining 21 points of damage is going to be reduced by 24%, or about a quarter. So a quarter of 21 is about 5. So I'm actually preventing 5 points of damage every second with my shields. Now, here's the thing. Every second, 5 points of damage is being dealt to my shields. My shields have a total capacity of 270 damage. Once that shield capacity reaches 0, this statistic also reaches 0, and I no longer block any damage to my shields. They're gone. Later in the game, you can actually find shields that replenish between phases. You can find shields with a significantly higher capacity and blocking rate. And so you want to definitely pay attention to the types of shields that you're getting, specifically if you find some unique modules or some that are utilizing strategic resources. Those shields in particular tend to have special effects that you'll have to pay attention to. But basic shields work just the way that I said. You have basically this overflow of 270 hit points that will slowly get whittled away based on this statistic and the natural penetration of weapons. And so some portion of each shot will go to the shields until the shields are gone. Now here's why I consider shields the better choice in most situations. In combat, you have hull points. Your hull is your health. So your health of your ship, your hull points, will slowly get depleted throughout combat. At the end of a combat, let's say your ship survives, you slowly regenerate these points. It's terribly slow, and they don't come back very quickly unless you have certain types of repair modules or you're on a friendly system. I believe when you're on a friendly system, they repair more quickly. I'm not sure if being in a hangar actually increases the repair rate of ships. I haven't checked that. If I remember during this game and we get into a situation where there is combat, I will point it out, but I'm not certain that it does. I know that your health definitely increases at a higher rate when you're in a friendly system. So that's important to know. That can also be an ally system or a minor faction that's friendly with you. So keep that in mind as well. But it regenerates very slowly. The neat thing about shields, as long as your shields are getting depleted before your ship is destroyed, it basically works like effective health. So this is basically 270 extra health to my ship, regardless of the weapon type, as long as the shield gets completely depleted before my ship gets destroyed. It's more likely to be completely depleted with energy weapons because energy weapons have a much lower penetration rate, so a bigger portion of the damage gets sent to this blocker, which then deducts from this shield capacity. The blocking statistic is an important one to keep in mind, and the higher the blocking statistic, the faster your shields are going to go down. Okay, so that's a good thing and a bad thing, but it's generally a good thing. You want your shields to go down in a fight. You want your shields to absorb as much damage as possible in a fight. The reason for that is, if I have any leftover shielding, that's a bad thing, because what happens with shields is once a fight is over, let's say I get engaged immediately on the same turn. Well, it's a new fight, it's a new engagement, and because of that, my shields will completely regenerate for the next fight, where my hit points will not. And so this is why when I have no options, when I'm choosing between shields or hull plating and I don't have the option of having both, I generally prefer shields, because any damage that my shields take in that combat phase, if my ship survives, I will get all of these hit points back for the next engagement. It will take several turns for these hit points to come back. And so while hull plating in some situations does have the potential to actually absorb more damage over the course of, say, 3 phases of combat, shields have the benefit of completely regenerating in the next immediate combat or the next several turns of engagement, while hull plating, the damage that you do take to your hull, you will not regenerate. So I like shields as my choice whenever I don't have an option. If I have an option for both, then it really depends on what the enemy is using, and if I don't really know what the enemy is using, then I like to have both options installed. I'll take the best of both options over 2 of the wrong choice for an engagement. But when it's just one, I generally lean towards shields. And the reason for that is that, as I pointed out, even though shields aren't super effective at stopping kinetics, they still absorb a good portion of that damage. They still absorb a portion of the damage from missiles. It's not as much, and so it takes longer for shields to actually do their job and soak up this 270 points of damage. But over the course of an engagement, if they're able to soak up the majority of their capacity, they've done their job. You want your shields to go down in a fight of any length. That means that any damage that's being done to your shields is not being done to your hit points, and you're going to recover your ships and make them combat worthy again more quickly. So that was the main point that I wanted to go over today, was talking a little bit about the defensive modules as well as the flexibility of this particular ship design. I hope this was helpful, and at this point I'm going to get back into my gameplay and finish the next 9 or so turns, but if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. If you have any more ideas or any other thoughts, please feel free to address them in the comments section. I love having my viewers comment, and I try to engage with you guys as much as possible when you do that. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying this video series, and I am going to continue it for several more videos. We'll talk a little bit more about another topic of the combat system in the next video, but for now, let's get back to the game. So, we were getting ready to end our turn. We had just sent our scout ship over here to uncover all of these curiosities, as well as be ready to get the last curiosity or two on Pollux uncovered. Pollux is the system we are gunning for with our next Argosy colony, and the Argosy will be ready in 2 turns. Boom, let's get moving. Get our ship moving. I don't think there's a whole lot we can do on this turn. So yeah, another turn. Things are getting built. That's good. Alright, there's the blue player. And it is indeed the United Empire. So, alright, the Argosy is ready. What kind of ship is this? This is a scout ship, right? Okay, we definitely want to get our ship over there before they get to those curiosities. Let's go ahead and deploy the Argosy. And we are 12 turns away from a free colonization. You can see the cost for our strategics went up significantly, as did the dust. So each time you lay down a new colony, the costs increase significantly. If I recall correctly, they reduce at a rate of about 10% of the starting values each turn. Maybe it's not quite 10%. If it's over 12 turns, it's going to be less than 10%. But I think it is a flat rate, so it's 1/12 each turn. And so these are going to slowly degrade over time. But because the costs keep getting bigger and bigger each and every time, this is why, again, I emphasized having so much of our strategic resources. So right now, like, we could literally colonize this turn 13, if I could find a way to come up with almost 2,000 dust. That's not really possible. But we do have enough strategics, just barely. So we're on our way to being able to get this down significantly faster than 12 turns. If we can, we do not want to wait the 12 turns for the free colonization. It's going to take us 5 turns to get to Pollux with our current engine type. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Argosy. And right now, we don't have a lot of options. You can actually upgrade the Argosy to like Model 2.0, and you have more slots and different types of things you can equip on here. Once we get the technology that gives us a better engine, we're definitely going to want to equip the Argosy with better engines and give it a little bit more movement speed. That may happen. Let's see, where are we at? So we could do that by grabbing one of these techs. This tech is pretty critical. Colonizing Savannah is not so critical, but basic fold drives are pretty important. Unlocks free movement for all ship and increases provision range on the Empire. This is pretty good, and the more important thing is that it's going to unlock this engine, which gives us a movement of 4 points. So I'm actually going to throw it in the queue just ahead of what we were doing. And my plan is, let's go ahead and move the Argosy here. So if we move the Argosy here, it's going to take 3 turns. And we'll stop here briefly to re-equip the Argosy with those better engines. And then we'll continue on our path to Pollux. That seems like a good plan to me. I also wanted this ship to stop there because I think we're going to do the same thing with it. Equip it with some better engines and maybe a slightly different layout. Okay, empty construction over here. So we have a couple of options. Let's talk about what they are. So this option is going to give us 16 industry currently. That will be more industry as our population grows. So that's one option. It's relatively quick to build, 3 turns, not bad. Another option, the filter barge. This one's going to take significantly longer, and it's going to pull some of our manpower for about 9 turns. I don't like that. So, especially when I can get the same effect from this one with a lower upkeep cost and a lower industry cost. So I guess the question is, we don't have enough curiosities to consider this. We don't have enough industry to really consider this. So really the only real options we have are more industry, more strategics, or maybe building another scout ship. I don't think we need another scout ship right away. We do have the ability to colonize this planet. Colonizing this planet would give us 10 industry from Xeno-industrial infrastructure. So that's not horrible, but I would much prefer to colonize one of these because we not only get the 10 from Xeno-industrial infrastructure, but we also get additional 10 for each of these anomalies. And that's why we're working towards desert planets right now. I think we'll go ahead and roll with the industry, and then I'm going to go ahead and queue up the mining building behind it just to get our resource gathering going a little bit faster. We have dropped to happy from ecstatic, and that is because I do believe, our golden age has ended. And so our golden age only lasted, I think, 7 turns, and we're well past turn 8 at this point. So, yeah. But even without our golden age, you can see we're doing quite well. Alright. This is also going to give us... Okay, that was kind of lucky for us. So the pirates fell on this system, which is fine. This wasn't one we were super excited about anyways. They did not grab Pollux, which is good for us. That means we should be able to get there no problem. I was a little worried that pirates might drop on here or even here and make it difficult for us to get to that system. If that were to happen, the other reason to get basic fold drives is so we could jump over to this other constellation and maybe settle Atlas or Centaurus and get the Academy. Either one of those might be okay for a future settle. So we'll just have to look. I do want to explore down here some as well. And so one thing we might want to consider, since we're sending this ship up this way to deal with this problem, is we might actually build another scout ship at one of these two and send it down this way. But we're not going to do that right away. That's a little bit later. Go ahead and get our ships moving. Okay, so the scout ship and the Argosy have both made it here. or no, the Argosy is still 1 turn away. Um, we will get Argon shielding done next turn. So what I think I want to do, it doesn't look like I can really get any farther with my probe, but I can kind of see some spots where there's still some fog of war. And since we got a way to turn anyways, and we're going to re-equip our ship, we might as well go ahead and send out these probes into those regions and try to grab as much information as we can. Maybe there. Three. Alright, that's all of our probes. We've got some more population. That's good. And this ship can't really do much else, so we're going to go ahead and skip its turn and just make sure everybody's building something important. Yeah, we can't really affect happiness any more than we are at this point. Our laws are still good. We've already done this, and we've got this figured out, so on to the next turn. Okay, so this effect is finally wore off. That's unfortunate. I think it increased a little bit of time on some of our science, but not a ton. We did get the -5 approval penalty removed, so maybe we can get back to ecstatic in some of our systems. Maybe. Cerebral Reality's next in the queue. That's good. We need that building built. Okay, we now have the better drives. And we have plenty of titanium and Hyperium to equip ships with. So we also have some new curiosities. Because we've unlocked higher tier curiosity searching, we can go ahead and search this one and see if we find anything good. And we found pirates. That is terrible. Luckily, at the moment, they're not attacking us. So let's go ahead and give this ship 2 of these engines and 2 probes. I think we're overstocked on probes at the moment. So go ahead and apply that design. And then this is something you really definitely want to remember to do when you're playing with Vultures. When you get better engines, remember to upgrade the Argosy. And now we have a movement of 14, which is just ridiculous. Let's go ahead and send this ship there. And this ship. Okay, so a prowler attacked us. We're going to have to retreat. And let's hope that it sent us the right way. It did. Okay, good. Go ahead and queue up the movement, and since we have full drives, we don't actually have to make this a detour. We can just go straight across because our movement is so high. We'll be there in a couple turns, so that's looking pretty good. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to deal with this pirate, and I don't have any military ships, so we may need to do a little research and figure out what this pirate is equipped with and see if we can't find a better ship design to take care of it. So this is a perfect example of figuring out how to counter your opponent. So we know that our opponent is an attacker class ship. That means they're going to have more hit points than the standard explorer class ships. This particular ship has 2,000 hit points, just like I predicted most of them would, and I think just about all of them do. It also has 100 manpower, which is more than we have. The manpower isn't really a factor in terms of space combat, but it is definitely important when you're dealing with invasions, and also later on with boarding pods. We may try to cover boarding pods in a later advanced video. I do have a full video on boarding pods. It was basically my early first impressions of them, so you might check that out for some more information on how they work, or at least how I understand them to work. Still a little fuzzy on some of the details, but they're pretty neat. So we can tell from the overall range accuracy and the projectile energy balance that they're using exclusively lasers. Lasers are most effective at medium range. They're okay at long and short range. And as I mentioned in the previous video, ships that utilize energy weapons, particularly lasers, are very, very susceptible to missile fire. They have no defense against missiles, and missiles are much more effective at long and medium range than the lasers are. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a special ship just to deal with this little guy. We're going to call him Pirate Slayer. Alright, so this should be pretty good. We may want to give him an engine. I don't want to use any Hyperium on this ship. This is not going to be a ship that is used for combat or used for scouting. It's going to be mainly used for combat. The other thing is we could just equip 2 of these. The other thing that I haven't talked about yet is this module here. And this is a repair. It gives us a little bit of extra health, and it also repairs our ship after combat up to 15% of our total health that's missing. We could go ahead and equip that because we will take a little bit of damage even with our shields against their lasers, but this will ensure that we might recover most of that damage after the combat. This is a one-time effect that happens at the end of combat only. So if your ship doesn't survive, it doesn't do you any good. And having this on your ship does not actually increase the repair between turns. Only after a combat engagement do you get this one-time repair effect. But this ship should be really, really effective at countering the opposing pirate ship, especially if we manage to engage at long range. And that is because our long range damage is significantly higher. Just as an example, this is the kind of damage that ship will probably be dealing. 13. Another thing that's real important is this number here. So 59 damage is what 2 lasers look like. And we can see if maybe he has 1 laser or 2. So depending on if his damage is 29 or 59, he's probably running 1 or 2 lasers. Could also be from higher tiers. Higher tier lasers will have that. But this is going to be way more effective. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to throw him in the queue right there. So in 3 turns, can we get it? Yeah, it's going to take 3 turns either way. It might actually shave a turn off when we get this thing built because it's going to increase our industry by 20 now because we've got another population. So that's pretty good. So good little example of combat and some of my tactics. One of the things that we're dealing with at this point, however, that is a problem is this, and I want to explain why this is happening. If you mouse over here, the system is under siege, which slowly saps your defensive manpower. We currently have 200 manpower on our system, and we're losing 2 manpower per turn. So this ship doesn't have a lot of siege potential, but it is slowly reducing our manpower. The other thing that sieges do, and I don't know where the best place to show this is. Yeah, it's not showing up anywhere here. But there's a penalty. Here we go. There it is. Minus 35 from besieged state. So we're actually losing 35 dust a turn because we're under siege. We're also losing a significant amount of science. So being sieged reduces not only your dust and your science, but it also, does it show up here? Does not affect your approval. It affects your strategics. And so if I go up here, you can see we were producing 9 a turn because we were getting 3 from this system. We're no longer getting the 3 from this system on either of these. And so the resources, all of your luxury resources, all of your strategic resources, when your system is under siege, cease to collect. Any additional ways that you collect things will still apply. So for example, I believe our hero is still applying her extra 1 per turn that she's creating, but we're not getting any of these resources, or any luxuries, if we had any in this system, would also halt being gathered as long as we're under siege. So sieges can be really, really detrimental to your economy and your science because they do affect your dust, your luxuries, your strategics. So sieging is a critical strategy to inhibiting other players and inhibiting the AI in some cases, but it's also used against you quite effectively by pirates, and it's very annoying. The good news is we have a really good counter to this coming in a very few turns, so it's not going to hurt us too bad. Go ahead and get our ships moving and hope that pirate sticks around for a little while longer so we can get rid of him. Pirate Slayer in 1 turn, so it did shave a turn off of that. That's good. The election is coming up. We can see that right now Scientist Party is definitely getting the most attention. The Pacifist Party also is getting a significant amount of attention. So our first election will probably be Scientist Pacifist, and we will lose the military as our secondary party. That's fine. We're not really using the military laws at this point, and this law is just going to stay in place forever, or at least for as long as we're building new systems, which is pretty much the entire game. Okay, we have 2 curiosities that we can search here, so let's go ahead and grab them. I only see 1. Are we getting that weird bug where they don't show up again? Or is it counting this one? It might be counting this one. We should be able to get this one on our way back. We do have a probe we could launch. I don't think we can quite get it that far. Well, let's see. Yeah, we might be able to get it there. Let's go ahead and send it out that way. We'll head over here next. $50 dust. That's good. We were running at a deficit. We're running at a little bit less of a deficit now. I think we completed Cerebral Reality down here, which basically gave us a little boost to our dust output. So that's why we're not quite as negative as we were. This building is much less useful at the moment, just because we only have 2 population on this planet, and it's not going to grow very quickly. So maybe we queue up this next, or maybe we queue up our scout. I think we're going to go ahead and queue up our scout and start sending probes down this way and see if we can't figure out what Horatio's doing down there. I think that's probably a good plan. And we got more pirate ships incoming. These are not to be meddled with. So they only have 39 offensive power. Their defensive power is pretty high, which means they probably have 2 defensive modules equipped and 1 offensive module. These ships are using kinetic weapons, and we can tell they're using slugs because of the range accuracy modifiers. That means that our missile ships are not going to be very effective against these guys. This ship actually has a higher offensive power, which means it's using 2 different types of offensive weapons. We can see it's a mix of offensive weapons. It looks like they may be using lasers and missiles. Maybe. It's hard for me to tell exactly what they're using, but they're definitely using well, it says it's 100% kinetic, so it's probably missiles and kinetics. So this fleet, the counter weapons are probably going to be beams, either beams or lasers, and engaging at long range. We'll have to take a look and see what we can do to maybe deal with this ship. We may not be able to deal with this pirate fleet until we get our own attacker class ships. Their ships have significantly more hit points than ours. They have a total of 4,000 hit points, and so we're going to need 3 ships to counter their 2 in terms of raw hit points, and we'll see if we can't maybe get some pirate slayers going here soon. We definitely want to get over here and stomp this pirate layer before it becomes a big problem. Go ahead and end the turn. Get out of the way before the pirates get there. Okay, we have our pirate slayer. We can go ahead and get him out there and attack. Alright, so I thought perhaps I forgot to save it. I thought I had switched these. Let's go ahead and do like this. Long range, medium range, short range. We're only looking at the center lane because that's all we have. It's not letting me... There's a space battle in progress. It's not going to let me change them because there's a battle already in progress. Lovely. Well, we'll just choose revive and rebuild. That puts us at long range, and if we do lose our ship, we get 15 dust back. This ship already has lost half of its hit points somehow. I'm not quite sure why or how that is. Maybe it's because it spawned that way and I didn't notice it before. But either way, we should have no problem destroying it. Since it can't retreat, it will probably fight us, and we can go ahead and watch it just for fun. Yeah. I don't think there's anything special about this menu that we need to talk about right now, so we'll go ahead and watch this. Pirate Slayer 1.0. There we go. So we're going to engage at long range first. And then he's not going to have any defenses against our missiles. So once our missiles get there, they should hit with 100% accuracy. There he goes. He's got very little health left, and we've taken a little bit of damage, but not a lot. Our shields have probably soaked up a good portion of that damage. And there we go. Tactics 101, my friends. Missiles beat lasers. So there it is. Pretty good example of what I was talking about. Glad that worked out for us. We've got this ship, which is going to be very ineffective against these pirates because they are very likely both rocking kinetics. And we did talk about in the previous video how kinetics are way effective against missiles, or missile-only ships in particular. I have a small problem here, and that is these guys have 4 move. I don't... Okay, can I see? I should be able to get here before they do, search the curiosities, and move on before they... I think it's going to take them 2 turns to get here. It's only going to take me 1. Otherwise, in this situation where I'm being pursued, I may just skip this system altogether and go to Pollux first. I may do that anyways. I don't know. Since we made it to Pollux, it's time to check on the Argosy and see where we are with early colonization. So, we have the 18 of each resource that we need. We do not, however, have the 1,319 dust. We may be able to fix that right now. So let's go to the marketplace, and the first thing that we want to do is offload any luxuries that we have, which we don't. But we could offload some Hyperium for sure. We don't want to offload any titanium unless we absolutely have to, but we definitely can offload some Hyperium. So let's go back. I need to remember exactly what it was. 17? Okay, I need to make sure that I keep at least 18 of this. 18. So, if I sell 30, that would put me at 17. So if I sell 29, that will only give me 300 dust. That's unfortunate. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wait. We're not going to sell this turn. We want to sell as much of it all at one go, because each time you sell it, it affects the market price for the next time you sell it. And we can see that Hyperium, the price is currently moving up, and so that means that our sell price should also move up, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to wait a couple turns. We're not going to be able to do this any faster than we can sell Hyperium, essentially. I'm not going to sell my titanium. Okay. What weapons does this ship have? See, this is another situation where we would be extremely ineffective and probably get destroyed if we engaged this ship with our missile fleet. Missiles are countered by kinetics. So we definitely don't want to get in a fight with this ship with our current loadout. We're just going to say sleepy sleep for now. And we'll blockade our system with this ship for the moment. Actually... We could go pick a fight with these guys. I don't know if we want to do that, though. I think we'll just hang out here for the moment. I may need to re-equip this ship and build a couple more Slayers, and then we'll go deal with this fleet. Let's end our turn. Let's see what the pirates do. I can actually wait and see if they make it. Okay, they only made it to us. So that means we can... Yeah, that's good. So we can make it here. We'll get a chance to scout, and then we're going to have to mash the move button to stay ahead of them. We got 3. Ooh. There's a lot of curiosities here. The arid planet is colonizable, but the steppes planet is probably the better first planet choice. Let's see, we got a life form and a life form. We got a subterranean, a life form, and a subterranean. Let's go ahead and uncover this one because they may be double strategic skin. It could also be luxuries, but let's find out. Okay. So we got adamantium on this system. That's pretty good, actually. and deciduous trees. We have now discovered deciduous trees. We also got Smart Survivor's Battle Tactic. We might look at that one later. And we finished public-private partnerships, which will increase our science. And we're going to start on our scout ship. Unfortunately, we won't have a chance to scout these right away. We're going to have to get away from these pirates. So we'll go ahead and get moving. Try to stay ahead of them. The cost came down quite a bit, so you can see it went from just over 1,300 to 1164, and we only need 16 of each strategic now. Still going to be unable to close that gap, but we are making money, and we are gaining more resources. So we just got a bunch of this. We need 16. So 40 would be 14, so 38. 38 is going to give us 400. That's going to put us at 6, almost 700 dust. So we're not quite there. We're going to have to wait at least 1 or 2 more turns. 4 turns until evaporative inhibitors. You know what? The other thing we're going to have to wait for. No, we already did get the arid colonization. Okay, so we're good there. Go ahead and end the turn. Get moving.
You lead well, comrade.
Okay. The Empire is currently welcoming. We found a new Minor Civ. Our hero is leveled up, and now's the time to start grabbing the food techs. So we have 2 options. We could grab Optimal Operations. This is an okay ability if you have a large population already established on a planet, particularly for the industry, and also a little bit for the food, particularly if you're in a system that doesn't have a lot of food. It can help offset the penalties you have for growth in those systems. You know, lots of hot systems are lacking in food. But this is a better choice, I think. It's going to provide us more resources out the gate, and it's going to help newer systems get established much more quickly. And so one thing we may end up start doing once we get 2 levels into this is moving her to new systems, especially if the planet that we can move her to, or the planets that we're moving her to, have anomalies, because then she'll also provide more industry. So providing industry and food to a new system is critical to getting it up and running quickly, and she's able to do that quite effectively in the early game. We'll go ahead and apply that. Told you we'd get the food eventually. We're only on turn 19, so before turn 20 we already have one of those 2 points. We also have an empty construction queue, and we need to figure out what we're doing here. So, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of good choices. We have several choices, but not any good choices. This is not a very good choice. This is not a very efficient choice. And it doesn't look like it's going to be later on either. But it does provide industry, and it will provide more industry than we're losing in dust. So it's probably the best choice, just to speed the rest of this stuff up. We knew that this system wasn't going to grow very fast. It wasn't going to be a super powerhouse system. The real reason we wanted it was for this. And since we wanted it mainly for this, I think it makes the most sense to go ahead and grab this next. We might also go ahead and queue this up afterwards, but the amount of benefit we're going to get from this is minimal compared to getting this up in 4 turns and getting our income even higher. We might be able to afford this now. We were at about 600 before. We're at only needing 14. So 50 plus 3, so 47. We could sell 47. 47, that's going to be 900, almost 1,000. And that is going to be enough. So yeah, we should be able to do this. So if I sell 47, did I miscount? Okay. It must adjust the price in stacks, so we're not getting the full price when we sell that many of them all at once. We could sell a little bit of titanium. We also have the 5, what is this, 63 a piece? Yeah, let's sell 2 of these. 3? I think we're gonna have to sell 1 more. Yep, 1 more. Okay, sell 1 more. 2 more. Crap. Alright. We got it. So we're gonna colonize 6 turns early. And we have the option of going ahead and colonizing this planet over this one. Now, these ones have some anomalies, and this one's going to bring in some transvine for us, but I don't think that's real critical. And while this is colonizable right away, it's also a small planet, which means our population is going to cap out a little quicker. So let's go ahead and grab the Endless Planet. This system, as you may recall, is going to be fantastic in terms of its industry output. This planet alone is plus 20 industry per population. The one downside is that we do have a very, very what's the word? A very, very small amount of food, I guess. Food is going to be a problem for this system, but we have a plan to overcome that. And the first step of that plan is getting our level 2 modernization down. So level 2 modernization is going to provide 40 industry and 40 food right off the bat. That's going to be fantastic. Then we'll go ahead and get drone networks up. Xeno industrial infrastructure is not as effective or efficient in this system as it was in the other ones, because we do not have any fertile or temperate planets here. So this will be a better building once we've colonized more planets. It's not going to be critical in the early game. Cerebral reality is cheap and it's always good, so we'll go ahead and queue that one up. And then at this point, there's really no need not to queue up both of these buildings, although I think I may move public-private partnerships ahead of Xeno-industrial infrastructure, just because I think the science is starting to slow down and we want to speed it up again. Okay, this is good. We're going to probably come in here and change this around a little bit over the next couple of turns, but we're just about to the end of this video, so thank you for sticking around with me for this long if you have. We're going to do one more turn, and then I'm going to go ahead and end the turn, or end the video for today. I don't see a whole lot else that we need to get done right now. We do so far in this system, there's a lot of minor civs, and I don't see any other factions. So one thing we might pursue in the next video is maybe upping our game at getting these minor civs, and we could get a whole bunch of systems through minor civilizations and really expand our empire that way. But we'll see. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and end the turn. Hope those pirates turn around and go the other direction. Be able to grab some curiosities. We're 2 turns away from being able to unlock this one. So I may stick around here for a while and just kind of launch some probes out in various directions. One direction I definitely want to launch is right there, because we can see that there is a minor civ here, it looks like. Alright, we got some antimatter. This is fantastic. So we have found antimatter and adamantium in this area, so we have access to both potentially, which is really good for us. What was that? Poor soil. That's a bad anomaly, but it's still an anomaly. Bad anomalies still benefit from the +10 industry, so there's that. -3 food. Yuck. Even more problems with food that we're going to have to deal with. Another Vulture population. Modernization is complete. And look at this. So, with 1 turn of production, because of our golden age, we are producing over 110 industry. 110 on a brand new colony. That's just crazy. We haven't even gotten 1 building down. We just got our modernization tech done. And because of our benefit from our golden age, yeah, it's just amazing. So yeah, and we're also getting 96 food, you know, despite our penalties for Black Thumb and everything else we have in this poor food forsaken system. So yeah, the ecstatic is really helping out because it's increasing our food production. Yep, almost 26 from ecstatic, so pretty cool. I feel like, yeah, we're doing really good. This is a great place to go ahead and stop the video. We will continue, and I will pick up with some more tips and strategies on combat. I think the next portion of the combat tips is going to focus on understanding lane engagement and the tactics cards a little bit more. So we'll talk a little bit more about those in the next video. And hopefully maybe show off some engagements with these pirates. We'll get some ships built, some more pirate slayers. We'll get out there and we'll take care of them and maybe start picking on one of our neighbors. I'm looking at you, Horatio. So until then, I hope you guys are having a great day. This has been The Nose Plays, and we'll catch you next time.